All right, let's get started. Start with Anant today and go down.
Um, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I spent a lot of time on the document that I thought was useful in getting a sense for how the current operational state of OP chains are. Thought there was pretty good details on it, but although I must say, on the sort of there was a lack of information on the plans for decentralizing the sequencer, which seems to be like the central point of posting transactions onto L1 today on OP chains. And it's currently run by a centralized operator. And the other thing I noticed on the doc was that there's no public mempool like in Ethereum, where uh, you know uh, transactions can be executed based on some MEV opportunities. It's sort of like a single enclosed mempool on the main OP mainnet. So I thought that was interesting. The other one that I spent some time on was on L2 Beat. I thought L2 Beat is like does a really good job of sharing information on a whole bunch of things. I'll share the link. But it seems like the total value locked, which seems to be like a proxy for. Uh, I mean, if we consider value as a proxy for the amount of trust that people have on a system, then uh, Optimism mainnet as currently ranks about $8.2 billion, and Arbitrum is at the top at 14 billion. So there's very little difference between the two, but I thought that was interesting. And also the L2 beat splits the total value locked into either bridged uh, funds into OP mainnet or things that were minted natively, and that's about an equal split. So about $4 billion of the 8 billion was natively minted with only 4 projects. It was like OP, the main token that was minted natively on OP mainnet, and there are a couple of other projects in a Velodrome and Quenta, which is like a advanced trading tool. Another one's like an automated market maker for Optimism. So it seems like a table stakes for these chains to exist, to have their own swapping exchange mechanisms and like have some basic. I guess they need stable coins. USDC is the popular stable coin on OP mainnet. I thought that was also interesting. The other thing I spent time was on looking at their airdrops. They do have like an airdrop going on currently. So they have bootstrapped all this activity on OP mainnet with various airdrops, and I found that even Arbitrum does that with Arbitrum tokens. Uh, and the sort of whole mechanisms by which they distribute these tokens was what they call as the retroactive public goods. Seems to be an interesting mechanisms that seems to take shape to incentivize mainly software builders, that people are building developers building some developer tools or any other aspects of the OP mainnet. They seem to that incentive mechanism seems to work well, where you build that and then you get retroactively drop some tokens, which is like interesting. I know they're trying to extend that to art and artists to improve the NFT activity on OP mainnet. I thought that was also interesting to observe. They do have like I saw the two. Okay, I was like, okay, where's the current state of the network? There is an upcoming upgrade called the Ecotone upgrade, which is to accommodate the Dencon upgrade on the mainnet, on Ethereum mainnet, which is to reduce the cost of posting transactions to the mainnet via data blobs. Which is going to further reduce the cost of OP mainnet transactions, which currently runs at about 30 cents on average. That was interesting. I also spent a lot of time on the Dune dashboard, which is the total value locked tells one part of the story in terms of, like I said, it could be thought of like a proxy for trust on a particular network. And it's kind of telling that without decentralizing sequencer, the amount of value locked is already at $8 billion. Like, I wouldn't be so confident putting any non-trivial sums of money, but because I don't know enough. But the Dune dashboard was indicative of the sort of activities that is happening. And I looked at like Farcaster is like one big application that's that's kind of deployed on the OP mainnet. That is not just like a financial application. And it seems Farcaster number of active addresses on the OP mainnet is only about like 0.3% of all active OP addresses. So majority of the activities is not Farcaster. And again, this is from the Dune dashboard that I thought was interesting. And the WorldCoin project seems to be using at the most number of active addresses on OP mainnet. So I hadn't quite looked into what WorldCoin does, but I thought the application lists on the Dune dashboard was useful to see like what are the different applications that are getting built on OP and then the broader OP chain, because it does include all the other chain activities on other chains, also including Zora, Base, and a couple others. Although the other thing from the Dune dashboard that was interesting was Base is now taken over in terms of revenue generator for the sequencer. Like most of the transactions are going through Base, then that gets deployed onto L1. So I thought that was also interesting because the Coinbase team seems to be like one of the core contributors for the OP stack, even with the ecotone upgrade of moving to a blob-based posting transaction to the L1 is sort of written by a Coinbase engineer. It's actively working on Base. So I thought that's a good example of the coevolution of a private and a public good like open source software. Yeah, I mean the GitHub is pretty nice. Again, I saw a proposal for like a bunch of zero knowledge proofs. Teams are working to work on their fault proof system for which is like how like OP seems like optimistically commit state changes to L1, and then it requires somebody to play a dispute game on their what they call as FPVM, like fault proof virtual machine, to dispute any wrong state transitions. And it seems like a bunch of zero knowledge proof system teams are working together to handle that. But yeah, that's where I'll stop. I will pass it down to Anuraj.
Well, I didn't read the technical part of it. I just directly jumped to the how to run a node, and it seems quite simple to run a node. But one thing that came to my mind, like, why would I run it this after my curiosity dies down? So I didn't see any incentive to keep running this. That was one thing, and then the other thing I noticed that it seems really open source friendly, and I compared it to Arbitrum, and it was really difficult to find something related to Arbitrum on how to run the nodes and what is it about. Yeah, those were my thoughts, and passing on to Jenna.
Yes, I did a little bit of diving into the weeds because I'm curious. I was curious to see, and so just playing around with their faucet reminded me of this. I don't know how normies will ever put up with it. This jumping back and forth between the app and the waiting, that delay, that lag for the thing to pop up that you say, yeah, I'll accept this. I give this permission, blah blah blah. So I got some, I got some faucet, some test net stuff. If I can help somebody at some point, just test an app, that'd be fun. And then as usual, my attention and interest went back to so who are these people really? So I'll throw some links in, but if you go to the governance page, they never mention anyone. Who's their main character, and who are the NPCs. Like they don't even name the companies that are part of it. Says companies, communities, and citizens bound by a mutually beneficial pact to uphold the vision. But like, who are they actually? And it feels weird. I suspect they have the Vitalik problem, where if you're too well known, it's actually quite dangerous in this space. So there's probably a real good reason that they don't make it obvious, but it still weirds me out. So that's one of the thoughts I had. Let's see. Oh, and then the piece about the link up with WorldCoin, World ID, and the Orb. And for me, it's like, well, what could possibly go wrong with that stuff? And so I made the mistake of actually loading the WorldCoin app on my phone, and now I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't. So how hard is it to delete your account? It was not at all obvious. I went into the docs. Apparently you can, but it takes 30 days, they say, for your data to really go away. So there's that. And then there was a Vitalik Warpcast, a cast that really is a good summary of a lot of what we've talked about over the years on the Monday and the Friday group. And I'll drop the link again. But he said soft power good, hard power bad is a consistent position that he respects and holds in many ways. So where in this community is the soft power, but where is the hard power? Is one of the questions that immediately comes to mind. Who really is building these websites and running all this kind of pretty tough code? All right, I think that's me, Venkat. You're next.
Sorry, it took me a minute. I was doing some kitchen cooking stuff. Yeah, this is all really opaque, and it's hard to figure out what the hell is going on. And I think one of the reasons is that the governance is done with the OP token. So I don't think it's any kind of deliberate security through obscurity or something. We saw this when we were applying for the RPGF grant for summer protocols. Like if you wanted to, like if you ask for a grant and then you want to kind of like market your case to the voters in the Optimism DAO, there's literally no way to do it because there's no such thing as, say, an email list or newsletter that reaches all of them. There's no directory of who holds OP tokens. So it's literally whoever holds the tokens votes, and the votes seem to govern almost everything. So there is the security through obscurity might be a side effect of the governance structure. So that's one thing that struck me. I was kind of like all over the place. It wasn't clear what to prioritize looking at, but I also noticed that in the architecture, the sequencer is currently a single sequencer, though there seems to be multiple sequencer on the roadmap. So right now, yeah, like Anant, I wouldn't trust more than like just pocket walking around money in an Optimism layer, which is what I have. Like I put some in Base, I put some in the OP mainnet. I should put some in Zora just to see what it is. I also think I went looking for like testnet faucet stuff, but then it was like annoying, so I gave up because it wasn't clear what I would even use it for. But I guess there are superchain testnets running, and I think, yeah, if you look at the main OP stack components diagram and look at the ones with dotted circles on them, it's clear that this is currently, I don't know, like 30% to 40% done, and the rest is basically not exactly vaporware, but reasonably well-defined tasks waiting for proper incentives to actually build out. And Coinbase, yeah, I think they're doing a little bit of a BDFX effort to actually lead the charge, because I suspect if you just had like this sort of like vague architecture diagram and then waited for people to like volunteer to do bits and pieces of it, it would work at about the rate of the Yak Collective, which means like, very slow, uncoordinated. So I think having a company like Coinbase come in and drive the action is almost like a necessary evil at this stage. Otherwise, it wouldn't get off the ground. But it does seem like there's at least enough voters convinced of like I know the importance of things like going from single sequencer to multi-sequencer and solving whatever problems involved. I suppose some sort of like distributed leader election problem is involved there. Like the detail I read said something like the nodes will be able to like basically elect a leader based on like some sort of like random algorithm. So there'll be multiple sequences running and you just elect one. And the mempool comment that Anand made, apparently, even though currently it's not a public mempool, there's nothing in the architecture that commits you to having a private mempool. As in, if you want to run an OP stack network, you could choose to have a public mempool. Of course, public mempool means governing MEV games and things like that. So overall, I think this is as good as you could expect something like this to be. With any sort of distributed computing, I think one of the worries I have is there's almost sort of like a minimum viable complexity before anything happens at all. It's like you can think of it as like a gravity well of complexity. So just like with space launches, there's a minimum sort of like velocity and thrust you have to hit before you can escape to even low Earth orbit. There's no point having like a bottle rocket or something that can't get up to a certain power. So here, instead of like gravity well and minimum thrust, you have something that's closer to a sort of complexity well and minimum complexity for anything to happen, and that's a function of like decentralization, because full decentralization seems to be quite a deep complexity well. But depending on like how you're willing to manage risks, all the conversations going on about sufficient decentralization, that I think is in the right direction. It's like, yeah, if you pick your centralization decentralization battles, maybe you can lower the depth of the complexity well, so things kind of work. But yeah, I too had like a question of like, who are the main characters here driving the architecture? Who drew the diagram? Who runs this website of the docs? All that is quite unclear, and that feels like it should be more transparent. And the actual mechanics of running anything is unclear, and looks like Anuraj did some diving in. But to me, it's like not clear what happens when I switch to the OP mainnet in my wallet and submit a transaction. So I should probably experiment more, and including the basic one of, has anybody tried going from bridging funds from L2 back to L1? So if this works as it says, it should take 7 days to do that, I guess. All right. So that's it for me. And I don't know if Nathan is on mute or let's see. Yeah, floor's open for anybody, including Nathan, if you want to speak.
Did you want to do a group experiment since we've got a little time left?
I'm cooking my breakfast, so I'm not at my computer that I can do wallet experiments with. But yeah, sure. If you have ideas for experiments to try, you can propose them. And I think we have some funds in the YC wallet on, I think, Optimism mainnet that you could use, or base. If you have more thoughts on whatever your reading adventures led you to, like, one thing I did figure out was there was a tweet I saw a long time ago describing what the various L2 cultures are like, and it says that Arbitrum is preferred by traders and people who basically need liquidity. So it's bigger because it's Arbitrum is preferred by DeFi, and DeFi is still the main application for L2s, I guess. So I would say if I were to bet on the future, they're both worth betting on, because financialization is like a harsh reality of crypto, and it's going to continue to dominate quite a bit of the activity. But everything other than financialization and DeFi, I think, is going to grow on OP. So everything actually interesting is going to happen on the OP stack. The superchain concept, I'm not sure I buy it yet, because yes, it gives you some horizontal scalability, and it seems to have like lots of delays going from one L2 to other within the super chain, and it's not clear how they're planning to do it without like doing the 7-day period back to L1 and down to L2 again. So it's kind of like proxy subnets on the internet, or maybe like visas and international borders in like physical movements. So it's not clear how to think about the super chain and whether it can work.
Maybe instead of an experiment, I'd be curious if folks did anyone look into the two houses thing, the token house and the citizens house?
those are they kind of like a parliament for the OP community?
Yeah, that's like at the root of the governance. If you hold tokens, you get rights. This sounds familiar. When we were looking at doing a DAO, a couple of years ago now, but I remember things like this. How do you establish who gets to vote on anything? And there's activity was one way to do it, and holding tokens was another way to do it. And I'm not quite sure that's what these guys are doing. And I don't know. I'd have to go look again to see if I could find something that explained it in actual detail.
Yeah, I'd be curious if you find a good link on that, because I did the governance side is one I didn't really bother poking into other than noticing that it was token based. Oh, and I think that connects to Vitalik's soft power, hard power point. He's on record being against governance tokens. So I kind of wonder how he feels about the biggest L2 or second biggest L2 being based on a governance token. But I think he's, on the other hand, he's mixed feelings because he's also a big proponent of like retroactive funding. So yeah, I think nobody's going to get everything they want in this ecosystem. Everybody's going to have like a compromised view of the emerging architecture.
And without knowing who actually has got the hard power behind the scenes here, it's just the whole thing just feels weird. I dropped a couple of screenshots into the chat just to save people the link onto the governance page in the docs.
But at least if you want to look at who are the people contributing, you can just go to the GitHub page and see who like is contributing to those. So it's showing the maximum number of commits and who has done it.
Oh, interesting. Can you drop the link in
Yeah,
that
I'm
you're
just
looking
going to
at?
that Optimism GitHub page, and then if you go to a repository, it will show you who are the people contributing to that repo. So, for example, this
Yeah,
one,
I don't
I
know where
dropped
their main.
I dropped
Got
this
it. Yep.
link.
Huh.
I don't think it's actually a secret. Like my experience of navigating the L1 Ethereum social community is it's kind of like widely known. If you're in the weeds doing stuff, everybody knows everybody else, and people are kind of like as well known as they need to be. There's no directory, but like for example, if you're the FBI and you want to come and find the top 10 people to go after, it'll take you 5 minutes. But yeah, I think the easiest way to like figure out who's who is to simply ask somebody who's already in the ecosystem, and then you can sort of triangulate with like GitHub commits and forum postings and stuff. It's yeah, it's not that deep, but you have to be like cautious about this stuff because sometimes the visible social network that you can get to simply by asking and networking does not match well to who has the power. So there might be like a big whale with lots of voting tokens who can like mess with everything, but are otherwise completely quiet and not well known.
Yeah.
There is a couple of things, not in terms of the whale and the sort of upgrading the system. Like on the Dune dashboard, I've noticed that there is a wallet address with about 40% of the OP tokens in just one wallet, which seems like a pretty high number or like concentration of OP token. And I thought that was interesting. The other one was in terms of the actual upgrade, they seem to have a sort of two multi-sigs, like one is controlled by the foundation, controlled by the Security Council, and both of that is kind of needed to work together to upgrade any of the infrastructure with the OP system. This was again, the diagram was there on the L2B, but then I shared a link to a Vodcast cast from, I think, one of the engineers that worked on an earlier upgrade in the OP system on, like, this is doing the Bedrock upgrade, and it sort of adds it has an interesting diagram of different people playing different role on how to upgrade a particular contract while it is running. So I thought that was interesting.
if people have like well-posed questions like who owns that wallet, maybe we should post it on Forecaster OP channel, and I suspect people would actually answer or tell us that that's actually a known flaw or whatever. So it might be interesting to identify a few questions to post. And any other thoughts people want to share, or we can call it early today if not. All right, let's call it early, and I'm thinking maybe we can do a similar session exploring the ZK L2s, what is it, ZK Sync and StarkNet and others. I've done like nothing on those, so I don't know what actually you can do. But yeah, see
We
you
could
guys.
also read the near protocol docs.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was causing a lot of noise at ETH Denver last year, so that might be interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, post any suggestions, and also for these Optimism and Arbitrum, if you have like suggestions for like dApps to look at or explore and experiments, post them. You might try something next time. All right, see you guys next week. I think Anant will pick non-crypto reading, and then 2 weeks from now it'll be me again. See you guys.
Thank you. See you guys.